Hi everyone and welcome back. This is Sky coming on to talk to you about Saturn Retrograde. I will post below in the description box the dates that this transit is taking place if you're curious to get some more information about that. This is just going to be an impromptu recording, so I hope that you enjoy it. It may be brief or long depending on what comes up, but I was just basically getting some new information and some downloads about this Saturn Retrograde transit, which I hadn't anticipated making a specific video on. So yes, this is one of the last Saturn retrogrades in the sign of Aquarius. In fact, it might be the last one. I will look forward and double check that momentarily. But we are learning about some of the very advanced, mature, and wise archetypes that the Aquarius sign represents. So we are learning how to pour from one canister to another. We are learning how to divest energy from one place and invest it into another place. We are learning basically how to transfer with this cycle of Saturn that we've been in since late 2020. We are learning how to pull out of one thing and push into another. And why sometimes life throws us curveballs, or why life kind of steps up to us and says, okay, you were expecting to have like a very cardinal march straight forward in a linear way back in Saturn and Capricorn. And here we are in Saturn and Aquarius. And actually, you've got to find a different way around, or you've got to find a kind of unexpected pivot or unexpected path around. Okay, and I would definitely refer you back to my initial Saturn and Aquarius video that detailed the transit in general, which I will link below. But that's what I'm learning as we're coming to this advanced stage with this late retrograde of Saturn in Aquarius. And that's basically that we're learning how to do things differently. We're learning how to go around, or how to transfer, or how to pass through certain different types of energetic portals that we're unaccustomed to. And what I was initially feeling as I was getting this psychic download to do this video was like, oh my gosh, there's just so many structures being made that were not necessary. Okay, I was feeling that with the Saturn retrograde that people were like trying to like implement or box up or package or straighten or, put more symmetry where it never naturally had to be. Okay, and this is like a major feeling to me. I was just like thinking through my house, and I was just kind of thinking to myself, oh my God, like half of the things that people are engaging in are just totally like tangential, totally a tangent, totally like sort of a greater journey with their own creative capacity on the positive side, and then on the negative side, maybe a fear-based structural approach to ascension or to moving forward. So we need to really understand what side of that we're on, especially for you creative folks out there, because that is a lot of what Saturn in Aquarius deals with. It's a greater form of creativity. And then the next two signs of Saturn in Pisces and Aries will grow on that even further, depending on how you chose to transfer or not the energy that you were utilizing here in Saturn and Aquarius. So during this Saturn retrograde over this summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, winter in the Southern, it's very likely for these to stand out, okay? These structures that never had to be created, these routines that never had to be created, these forced or imposed symmetry. That's really how I feel it to be, is like a symmetry that never had to happen. You know, humans are really obsessed with symmetry. You know, we have like beauty norms that are highly tied to symmetry. We have, ideas that symmetry represent divinity or represent some type of like greater attraction or greater power, when certainly, yes, there is a sacred geometry or a symmetry to most of the earth plane, but there are also, the earth is very asymmetrical in certain ways too, and sacred geometry points this out in an interesting way. But one of the best things you can do to really heal up during this transit is understand the way that nature produces asymmetry sometimes, understanding the way that nature produces symmetry and how nature does it versus how humans try to do it. Because I feel that the negative of this Saturn in Aquarius transit has basically been like a symmetry at all costs, or a structuralism at all costs. Like no matter what the price is, I want to have like perfect teeth. No matter what the price is, I want to have like the perfectly formed business. No matter what the price is, I want to have like all of these things that create a certain expression or a certain projection of power, divinity, or alchemy, because that's what the sign of Aquarius is about. It's about alchemy, and it's about the effect of true alchemy, which is like some type of transformation or some type of maneuvering of energy. So as Saturn goes retrograde this summer, it's going to really reveal how we've done. There's going to be, I think, a rubric or some type of very clear result or fallout for some people based on the way that they tried to impose a certain symmetry, or based on the way that they tried to alchemize some type of greater momentum or transformation. And I think that there are results all across the spectrum. I mean, you have some people who are like truly master alchemists, and then you have some people who are dabbling, or you have some people who have no clue what they're doing and are trying to like generate something off of nothing, or are trying to basically fool themselves. There's also a potential with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius of self delusion. So what do I mean by this? It's because it's different than what a lot of other astrology placements that might indicate this are. You know, we might think of like, you know, a Moon-Neptune conjunction or a Sun-Neptune conjunction as like a self-delusion or a self-tricking process. And that's not what it is like. It's not like that placement. This is more like, for example, say you love, I'm just trying to think of a hypothetical. You love being a business owner, but you hate the industry you're in. So what you do is you like try to impose all of this symmetry around like creating a business or creating some type of like corporate structure, and then you like maybe really revel in the aspect of getting funding or investing and like advertising, but like as for the industry itself, you couldn't care less. This is an example of the false disillusionment that Saturn and Aquarius can cause. Because you see, you have two different canisters of energy there. On one hand, you have the canister of the like meat and potatoes of like what you're selling, what you're doing, and what the operation is. And in the other canister, you have like the legal frameworks, and you have all of these like norms and procedures that are standardized across all industries. So Saturn in Aquarius is sophisticating these types of things further, and perhaps introducing many new types of normative structures to where basically anybody can do anything and find significance. I mean, this is like the positive side, is like you can be in any industry and still love it because you connect to it somehow, like connecting points, really, you know, branching out and connecting to so many different parts of the world, the globe. But the negative really is like being totally immersed in something, or having a life like 95% devoted to something that isn't really for you, but like kind of spun or alchemized or transferred into some type of structure that somehow appeals to you more. So it's very tricky. Okay, and this also has to do with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces we had earlier in 2022, alongside this direct Saturn in Aquarius. That semi-sextile that was happening there led to a lot of peripheral changes and a lot of peripheral alchemizations, I want to call it. So we have such an imperative time this summer of taking stock and understanding, what are we really participating in? Are we dressing things up to ourselves that we aren't willing to face? Like, are we engaging in something and not realizing it for what it is, not calling a spade, and perhaps even living a fantasy, or living in a fantasy-based game, you know, considering what Jupiter and Neptune were doing, and also how we now have this Jupiter-Mars-Chiron conjunction in Aries at the time of filming this, which actually creates a similar dynamic. It's very distinct in the sense that it's in the first sign of Aries, but there's again this kind of like life force, imposing of life force that happens with any strong Jupiter configuration. And the fact that it went from Neptune and then applied up to Chiron, and Mars also came, Jupiter is really playing an interesting game with us right now. And as you know, if you're into astrology, Jupiter is like the antithesis of Saturn. Okay, so it's an opposing force representing expansion, whereas Saturn represents structure and limitation. I think that Jupiter kind of wins out right now. Okay, so how this is going to manifest at a more mundane level is basically all of these tricky things, all of these self-disillusionments, all of these kind of desperate moves to create canisters or create structures that generate a certain false appeal or something, I think they're going to kind of really be tested, okay? And I think there are just going to be a lot of little, perhaps even insignificant moments throughout the day where one thinks, gosh, it's just not quite right, or it's just not quite, something doesn't quite connect about it, or something doesn't really achieve symmetry, okay? There's something asymmetrical about it, despite trying so hard to create or foster a symmetrical result, right? When one really tries for symmetry, you know, when someone tries to draw a perfect circle, you know, this oftentimes creates a much worse circle than had we just gone for it, you know, and not even thought. You know how when you sit and you try to write in the best handwriting, it's a lot worse handwriting than if you just do it without thinking about it. This is the energy of the current Saturn movements. This current Saturn retrograde in Aquarius is forced handwriting, and it looks forced, and it looks like it's not, you know, your best. So congratulations, my friends. What this means is that you can stop trying so hard, okay? This Saturn retrograde in Aquarius is a big sounding call globally to like, quit trying so hard. Stop trying to draw the perfect circle here. You're a human, okay? Stop trying to hold yourself to certain standards, you know, especially if this Saturn is hitting anything in your chart by harsh angles, conjunctions, squares, oppositions. I feel there could be a very harsh insecurity and a very harsh perfectionist streak with this in the context of transference or in the context of creative or Aquarian structures. So what's also been happening for the last 2 years is a greater conventionality within the unconventional. So countercultures or unconventional paths in life becoming more legitimate or becoming more status quo. And I think that's also been hard for a lot of people in the collective consciousness to process, because we have this sort of like dualistic nature of life right now. Again, 2 canisters is the archetype of Aquarius. So some of us don't really know like what is the right or wrong way forward here, because it's kind of like some of these things which are not status quo, you know, odd industries or new world industries, like things that have not been around that long, seem to be flourishing more and seem to be more popular, but they don't or haven't maybe stood the test of time like some of these older world energies, which might be unpopular and might be slow to generate a result. So it's very hard to know to what degree to live a hybrid experience, you know, 1 foot in and 1 foot out, old and new world. I've been talking about that ever since we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And is there some type of switch at this point in time, or some type of adjustment, you know, maybe edging more into the old world or edging more into the new world, leaning more or less into it? I do think that that is indicated right now. And for most people, I think that it's indicated to really lighten up or do things that you feel always yields you a more positive result. So I've been talking in some of the more recent videos on my channel, the New Moon in Gemini video, the June Comprehensive Astrology video, about how there's a major lightening happening. So like less heaviness, okay, like less weight to be carried. And Saturn in Aquarius also aims to do this. Okay, and where I think some of us have gone wrong, or some of us have struggled, is we came obviously from Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, and Capricorn, which was like, you know, really consolidate your material world, and almost in an archetypal way. Okay, like transits like that have not happened in 500 years anyway. So then all of a sudden it was over, you know, in late 2020, and we had Jupiter, Saturn conjunct in Aquarius, and it really, really changed the tone. And it's really hard for many people's psyches to balance both of those, old and new world. And I don't think anybody knows the answer. I certainly don't know the answer to it either, but I see in myself and pretty much everyone that I know this kind of awkwardness or this unsureness about how to proceed here, right at this point, here in June of 2022. How do we proceed? I mean, it depends on each person. There's no blanket answer. But what I will say is that to me, it's indicated that there has to be like some type of pruning or lightening away from the old heavy ways, and probably a slightly less of a focus on materialism, because that's a heavy thing. So the sign of Aquarius, which Saturn is in, is a fixed air sign. So it wants to fix and generate some type of structure that protects and prolongs wieldiness, okay, lightness, easy passage, mobility, easy transfer. So what I basically feel that Saturn in Aquarius is trying to teach us at a larger collective level, and we're really going to be seeing this in this retrograde, is like, how do you maintain options in your life? How do you maintain mobility? How do you sustain and maintain the ability to basically move things around? So this is very interesting. This is very Sphinx-like. This reminds me of certain Egyptian mythologies about the way that the Sphinx would kind of like puzzle over things and move certain things. It's kind of like the chessboard, or moving certain energy lines around. So, I mean, is energy manipulation rampant right now? I think it is. I think that you have a lot of people, especially like getting very interested in that type of thing. And that's not really what this video is about. But I feel like this Saturn in Aquarius is just really trying to do something great for us. It's trying to really cement many of our statuses in that of options and that of transference. And for people who are super linear, super cardinal, super focused on like one goal, one way of life, one location, one thing, I think it's a very destructive transit, because it's veering so much, it's pivoting so much, and it's finding new unconventional ways to get certain places. So at a more mundane level, you could see big changes in transportation here. New types of energy sources, of course, yes, like new ways of getting from point A to point B that we've never seen. I mean, that would be a great way to channel this energy in a more, healthy way. And I think that it's already happening. I think that there are big changes and innovations happening in transportation. And also you can really see it in the digital economy as well, where it's like much more easy to spend, and it's much more easy to receive as well, like with shipping, and you click a button on the device and all of a sudden it's at your door. And there's a very complex network of energy movement happening there. And I think that Saturn in Aquarius has given us this to really foster our own freedom. So delegation right now is almost at a height that it's never been at in human history. Like, the ability to have something done for you with the click of a button is more available to more people. And it's not available to everybody, of course, and that's another video for another day. But I think that a really good thing during this Saturn retrograde period is to really take a look at, what are you doing? Do you have to do it? Is there something else that needs done? Hierarchy of priorities. I already brought that up for you guys a lot when Saturn went into Aquarius, because it's really also a hierarchical sign, and it's a sign that deals with priorities, and it's a sign that deals with networks. So corporate hierarchies, public hierarchies, even family hierarchies, all coming up to be changed or reviewed right now. And because of that review process, there's not a lot of security in any one place in a hierarchy. Okay, so you might think, oh, I want to be a CEO, or oh, I want to be, like a contractor, or oh, I want to be independent, or oh, I want to be this or that. And it's kind of hard to really gauge what it means, because all that is changing. And I can tell you it won't be until Saturn is in Aries that stuff starts to settle, because Saturn in Pisces will further disturb and distort hierarchies. And you'll start seeing people have power in like weird places that you never thought people had power. And it can all become very fluid power when Saturn is in Pisces. And I mean, that's eventually what we're getting to, is a Saturn-Neptune energy. And it's going to be very alchemical. It's going to be very versatile. It's going to be very unnavigatable for a lot of people too. Depends on your chart, depends on how you're wired as a person. You know, if you're super materialistic, Saturn in Pisces doesn't have that much for you. If you're super psychic, if you're super intuitive, you know, it has something more, I think. But basically, also take a look with Saturn in Aquarius. Take a look at denied intuitions or instincts denied or gut feelings not paid attention to. The sign of Aquarius is about the mind. It's about the logical capacity. It's less about deep gut feelings. And I feel that that's also what the Saturn retrograde is going to hinge on, is like, what gut feeling did I deny? How did I trespass over my own instincts? Okay. And if you see that you have any like bad feelings or unhealth, you know, lack of ease in your life, I think that it's from not listening to a gut instinct, or it's from trying to force a certain linear structure or linear path, like in Saturn and Capricorn, where it was good to do that, you know, out of time. Okay, trying to do that out of time with Saturn and Aquarius. So to put this all into context for you, we had Saturn and Sagittarius, I believe from like 2016 through 2017. And that structured our creativity. That made the creative business really possible. That made the art career really possible. That made, or that gave the energy to start for a lot of people at square one, or to somehow build materialism or materiality on something conceptual. Okay, then we moved into Saturn and Capricorn, and that really was the time, you know, 2018 through 2020, okay, through the end of 2020, that was the time for the linear cardinal march forward, for the structuring, for the business acumen, for the deal making, for the materialistic concern. And that ended in the calendar new year of 2021, and it was no longer about that at all. Like, it became kind of silly to engage in almost, because it's like it got so over focused with the Jupiter Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, to the point where it's like going to be such a mainstay in like the entire lives of so many people. But now when Saturn moved into Aquarius, it became about an alternative path, or about transferring something from one place to another, or moving into a different type of sphere, and somehow making your state of options or your state of opportunities, your state of crossroads, essentially, fixed and predictable. And I do think that over the oncoming year of 2022, like throughout the next 2 quarters, that's going to become a little bit more understandable, because I don't think that everybody wants to be in a state of crossroads for their entire lives. I don't think everybody wants to be in these like really strong decision-making modes for so long. But I do think that it will last for the entirety of the Saturn in Aquarius, and then for some people even into Saturn in Pisces, because Saturn in Pisces is very expansive, and it's for a Saturn transit, and it's also gives a unconventionality and a sort of separate way, kind of in a similar way to Saturn in Aquarius. So this is not going to end until we get back into a cardinal Saturn in Aries that will have us kind of connecting back to this place that I see so many people just wanting to be in right now, which is like move forward, structure it more, impose more regulations, impose more routines, and plan it better. And it's just really, really not what Saturn in Aquarius is about. So I think one thing that's important, like as we go through this retrograde of Saturn in Aquarius, is to really look at mindsets and logical paths forward, and really ask ourselves, would that really even be that great? Or is that actually a good thing for me? Am I being too traditional in my thinking? Am I also not acknowledging tradition at all? Any extreme that deals with traditional mindsets or conventional ways to achieve something gets really funky with a Saturn in Aquarius and Pisces. But nonetheless, it is still Saturn. So it always ends up kind of leading or leaning back into a traditional or more, status quo way. But this is definitely Saturn's most non-status quo, non-conventional part of the zodiac for Saturn. So at the same time, we have a lot of freedoms to do things in a different way, or to find a new path, or to kind of move towards something in a different way, transferring our footing into a more, I don't know, individualistic or happily unconventional path, but making sure that we're not also like losing track of the greater emotional significance, because that can happen with Saturn in any air sign. It's very hard for an air Saturn to have any type of emotional connection to what's going on, because Saturn automatically is pretty limited in emotional thinking. It's about realistic thinking. It's about material thinking. It's about security-oriented thinking. So it's not such an emotional planet. And then especially when it's in a sign like Aquarius, which is about emotional detachment, I think that we might really be putting our emotional well-being low in our hierarchy of priorities right now, if we're not really zooming out and seeing the bigger picture right now. Also, just a funny kind of remark is like, try to just know how things work, okay? Like, try to just employ some common sense, or try to just kind of know what you know and kind of just like move through things. Like, why I'm saying this is because there's almost a neurotic sense of like planning and strategizing and imposing weird like routines or structures during this retrograde specifically. And I think that it's a time for lightening the load. I think it's a time for having less weight, less heaviness, and really confronting our sense of emotional well-being in a way that is not emotional for the sake of catharsis, but emotional, I want to say, for the sake of our greater narrative. And why do I say that? For the sake of our greater narrative? Because what Saturn in Aquarius can do is it can debase the entire narrative that you're going through. This is just a raw psychic channeling. It can debase everything. It can, in the name of some type of compensation that's based on asserting the previous Saturn and Capricorn's linear need to march forward, Saturn in Aquarius can put so much unneeded strategy, structure, and weird mind frames like right in front of you consciously, and it ends up bypassing the greater like story that you need to tell, or it ends up taking part in way too many tangential, unneeded considerations. So overactivity of the mind, okay, with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. Overactivity of the third eye, crown chakras, absolutely. So I definitely invite you, now that like Jupiter is in Aries, to like really get into the body. And I've been talking about this for a while, getting that energy out into the extremities, decentralizing that energy a little bit. Because, I mean, you can see the debasing all around. I mean, it's very connected to themes of like inflation or lesser quality in goods and things like that. That's very connected to this type of energy, because it very much has a certain like moral baseline that's like, as long as I'm producing, as long as I'm, fulfilling some type of structural obligation, as long as the obligation is fulfilled, then I'm making it. I'm fulfilling what I set out for, a few years ago, and I'm there, and it's happening, and it's being distributed, and it's real, and do you see what I'm trying to project to you, like the way that this energy can think? Meanwhile, behind that conscious distracting mindset is an emotional need for a greater significance within our story that might not be getting its time to be thought of or considered. And then Saturn in Pisces becomes particularly edgy, okay? So we can do ourselves a lot of good here if we start thinking about the greater emotional significance of our narrative and not putting that off to a point where it starts to lash out in unconscious ways. Okay, so in conclusion, everyone, I think this was a pretty nice channeling. I'm really happy with what came up, but try to get past the front and center kind of like mindless nagging of the conscious mind, kind of joking a little bit there, and really reach down and find out, like, what do I need? What are my needs now? Have they changed? Saturn in Aquarius also represents a change in needs, okay? And so does Saturn in Pisces. So try to take a deep breath, try to lighten your load as much as you can, delegate. I say take advantage of the vast access to automation that society does offer right now. But for some people, as they do that, yeah, their mind becomes much more filled with chatter. So that's not about that, though. That's a different type of unchanneled energy coming through. So unchanneled energy as a result of emotional or even like deeper psyche level detachment, okay, that channels is a certain like unstoppable like radio chatter, like right in the front of the conscious mind. And it's like very easy, I think, to overcome that. It's just really about getting into the body and also not depriving yourself of your own emotional story. Like those are the two key ways. So don't be freaked out if you're having that. And it's just about a choice. It's about a choice to not let one's emotional and physical needs go unmet, because that detachment is the negative channeling of Saturn in Aquarius. But on the positive side, you can get to where you need to go in pretty much like any creative way, or the creativity is also boosted, or the ability to make things work, okay, in different ways is through the roof. And yeah, overall, I think that we have a lot of hope to rediscover. And I think that we have a lot of instincts to re-honor or reconsider. Okay, so thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and thumbs up the video and comment and let me know if it resonated for you. Yes, I will be coming to produce more content soon. You can always check out my community tab here on YouTube, or thumb over to my Patreon page or my Twitter to have more sporadic updates about what's happening on this channel. And thank you all so much for viewing. I hope you enjoyed this, and stay safe, sound, and easier, less heavy, okay, with this Saturn retrograde happening this summer. Talk to you soon. Bye.